Welcome to Staffing in Sync, panel conversations with the staffing industry's top thought leaders on today's most pressing and important staffing and business issues. I'm your co-host, Charles Epstein for SyncStream, leaders in ACA, ERC, and WOTC compliance automation for the staffing industry. I'm joined by my co-host, Tom Kosnik, president of the Visus Group and the staffing industry's leading expert. Hey, Tom.
Good morning, Charles.
Good morning. Today, our panel will be discussing the Great Correction. Will wages return to pre-inflationary levels? Tom, if you would, give our audience some background on what we'll be discussing today.
Sure. Two words: wage inflation. We are living in a labor market that none of us will probably ever live through again. And when we think about the what we've experienced over the last 18 to 24 months, recruitment, retention, compensation, all these things affect us. And I'm really excited to have our panelists here with us today to unpack how the wage inflation is affecting our businesses and the different dynamics in our business. But first, I'd like to thank SyncStream for hosting the series and Essential Staff Care, the largest writer of employee healthcare, insurance, and benefits to the staffing industry.
Indeed. Before we introduce today's panelists, this is just our second panel cast. So I want our listeners to know that we'll be holding these on the second Tuesday of every month, focusing on a different topic with a different panel to share real-world experiences, insights, and perspectives related to all aspects of staffing.
Hey, let me introduce the panelists now. So David Salters, Managing Director of Warren Averett Staffing and Recruiting and Warren Averett HR Solutions. I asked David to join us. He's been a longtime member of the President's Roundtable that we sponsor. And David has offices and doing business in a half a dozen different states on the professional staffing side. We've got Brian Seiberling, who's a CPA and CFO at the Reserves Network. Reserves Network is doing business in 18 states around the country. And Brian is also a member of the CFO Roundtable and one of the better contributors, I might add. He's got great insight on what's happening in the industry. And Rich Froeschle, who is senior economist at the Texas State Technical College out of Austin, Texas. And I first off, for an economist, I really enjoy Rich's energy and what he can bring to these kinds of calls. And Rich and myself, we were both speaking at the Texas State Staffing Conference not too long ago. And so I had the opportunity to see some of the information that Rich has, and really excited to have all three here today.
Yes, great. A few words on the ground rules. During the panel discussion, attendees are welcome to post questions in the chat. We'll select several to pose to the panelists in the 10-minute Q&A following the panel discussion. Tom, I know you just wanted to set the stage before we get into the panel.
Yeah, just a couple of things. And actually, I'm going to ask Rich to really help us set the stage. So most of the people on the call here are viewing our small to mid-sized business owners, labor shortage, inflation, and the impact on wages and hiring. And we've got all kinds of concerns in those areas, depending upon what part of the country that we live in. And so, Rich, just size up from what you see in terms of inflation and wages and the impact it has on wages and hiring.
Yeah, great. Tom, panelists, it's great to see everybody and be a part of this. I'm a little sheepish this morning because, economists have projected 9 of the last 5 recessions. And so I'm not sure we have much of a track record going forward here, but I want to give you some perspective, I think, what we see from the labor market side. And just in case nobody is or anybody's uncertain about this, labor shortages are real and they're real across the entire country. But I think it's important to note that there are marked differences depending on what industry you're in, what region of the country that you're in, what occupations you're recruiting for, and maybe even what skill sets that you're looking for. We see in the nation that there's about 1.7, 1.8 job postings per unemployed person. Here in Texas, that same number is 2.3 on job postings for every unemployed person. So that labor ratio is different depending on where you are and what you're looking at. I think it's also interesting to provide some, Tom, we start talking about historical perspectives, is to think back to February of 2020 and where we were and what the country looked like. I don't know about everybody else, but in Texas, the unemployment rate was around 3.5%, and we had very significant general labor and skill shortages. So in many ways, what we're doing with this, I call it a hurricane recession, because structurally there was nothing really wrong with the economy. We just sort of blew everything up, and now we're rebuilding it or opening it back up. Some of the same shortages that we experienced before the pandemic, we are clearly seeing now. I know a lot of those you'll see in the IT professions and technical healthcare professions, in logistics and related manufacturing technicians. I know here in Texas, all of those areas are in significant short supply. But a lot of these issues are skill mismatches. We had significant skill matches before the recession, and a lot of that just simply hasn't gone away. And interesting, Tom, if you don't mind, I'd like to note that skill shortages and addressing skill shortages from the education side is something that we care very deeply about here in Texas. Texas State Technical College is actually the only college in the country who is getting paid based on the outcomes of our students. So we care very much about what happens to our students in the labor market and making sure that what we're teaching is the kind of skills that are in demand and allow our students to, to go forward and get good jobs related to that. And so that's a whole nother issue. I'd love to talk about it some other time. I think, let me go back to the labor shortage issue. We start talking about labor shortages. They persisted for a lot of different reasons, lots of different reasons. But I think the underlying basis for all of us, for all of this, is the general country's demographics. We have a significantly slowing labor force growth across the country, and we have declining labor force participation rates. So there's a lot of things that we think that we can do and deal with in terms to improve people's participation in the labor force, attract them back into the labor force. But truly the demographics, slower labor force growth in general, and declining labor force participation rates, especially actually for non-college degree men, are in significant decline, what we've seen over the last 10 or 15 years specifically. As relates to wages, I don't think there's any doubt that we've seen significant wage increases. The year-over-year, the official year-over-year wage increases for the U.S. has been in the 6.2, 6.3% range. Although I think we all know that there are certain segments of the country and of the economy that experience much higher wage increases than that, especially on the lower end of the wage spectrum. So the average sort of masks a lot of things. Economists like to say that you can drown in an average 6 inches of water. And I think in some cases, wage increases are just like that. The truth is that that inflation now bringing into all of this has really eroded those wage gains purchasing power. And I think that's right. That's sort of at the heart of whether we'll continue to see wage gains going forward. Millennials, which are becoming a huge part of the labor force, are actually sort of known as the job hopping generation. They view the ability to actually get wage gains based on their ability to move from organization to organization. And so what we see, what inflation is doing as it erodes purchasing power, it's causing people to say, how do I recover my purchasing power? And in many cases, that means moving jobs. And as the quit rate rises, we also see quits as probably one of our primary indicators of persistent wage inflation, people moving from one job to a higher paying job. So I think all that kind of comes in. And then I think the last thing that we set the context here is that just last month did the US economy recover to pre-pandemic levels of the labor force and employment. And yet job postings data show that we've had an increase of roughly 60% from pre-pandemic levels. So you're really forcing a lot of demand into a pared down labor pool, and that's driving labor shortages and also causing a lot of wage inflation for us.
That was great.
Yeah. A Rich, you mentioned a lot of dynamics, a lot of statistics, inflation and participation rates and labor in the market, and all technically that bodes extremely well for people that are in the staffing business and own staffing businesses. And I know from my own experience of consulting with staffing firms that, gosh, these guys are the men and women that own staffing businesses. Most of them are growing their businesses and they're making really good money, but they're not real happy because of all of these pressures that you're talking about, whether those are with temporaries or whether that's with internal employees. But great segue. Charles, why don't we kick into and start talking about how the temporaries and associates, some of the questions there then.
Yes. Picking up from that, over the past 2 years, we've seen the wages of both temporary associates making $12 to $15 an hour to professional contractors making $50 an hour increase somewhere between 33% to 50% on average. Some areas of the country have seen 100% wage increases. Great work if you can get it. Will these wages hold? Will they decrease? What is your company planning for? David?
Well, we certainly haven't seen any indications of holding or decreasing. So we're preparing for those wages to continue to increase into 2023. I think the most recent jobs report that just came out last month for July reflected another 5.2% increase, and it's been several months rolling. And based on the behaviors that we're seeing on the front lines with candidate behavior, how they're responding, how our clients are responding, I would predict that's going to remain strong for some time. Back to Rich's comments, it's supply and demand, and until some of this resolves itself, I see wages continuing to increase.
Hey, that 5%, is that 5% month over month or 5% July of 22 over 21?
Yeah, it's over July of 2021, but I think it's been every month this year has been 5% plus. So this thing just continues to snowball.
Yeah, Brian, thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with David. I think it's going to continue to rise. We've seen it in our mix of business. We're very geographically dispersed, so we do business in the Midwest, South, Southeast, Texas, and multiple states and multiple markets. And to Rich, it changes. It varies by those markets. We still have some areas in the South that are still trying to pay $10 to $12 an hour, and you can't find people for that. So you got to to be in the game, you got to be in $14 to $17 an hour range to be able to find people to work in these different manufacturing companies and stuff in the South. So it is very geographically dispersed, and I see it just continuing because we're always having conversations. We still have a lot of our companies that just still haven't gotten there, and they're getting there really slowly. They've gone from 10 to 12. Now we got to bump up a little bit more, and we're always having those discussions with them and doing a wage analysis with them, saying, "Hey, here's what all the other employers in the area are paying. You want us to find people. You got to be paying $15 to $17 an hour, or if you're going to pay a little less, you got to offer incentives, whether it's an attendance bonus or something like that, to get them equivalently up to that $15 to $17 an hour range."
Brian, let me just piggyback on that. I do a lot of work with chambers of commerce and the like, and I can't tell you how many times I've had people come to me and said, "Well, when can we just get back to normal?" And when they say get back to normal, they really are talking about, I just want to hire the same people I had before, and I want to pay them the same wage before, and I have to sort of give them the bad news that normal that they once remembered is now gone, and there is a new normal going forward, and it includes all the things that you and David just talked about.
Yeah. Let me ask you, how is your company responding to these wage increases for temporary associates and professional contractors? And if you would, give us some specifics. Brian?
Yeah, certainly. I kind of touched a little bit upon it when the question I just answered with wage analysis. When we go into to work with a company, a customer of ours, and they're paying low wages, we know it's going to be a hard fill. So in order to work with them, with this market, it also gave us the opportunity to kind of more select employers of choice, as we call them, who really be a little more selective of who our customers are. So we'll go in there and say, "Hey, for this role, you're paying $11 an hour. If you really want the talent to fill these roles, we got to be up in the $14, $15 an hour range at least to be able to help you fill these orders. And we'll come in with, it's about a 15-page analysis that we work with that gives you a different market analysis, based on the position you need to fill, what the average pay rate is per hour, and it gives you your surrounding employers or competitors for this labor talent. And usually one of the big ones is Amazon in all the different areas. Now they laid some people off, but they're paying $17+ an hour. You got to always compete with that. So you got to come somewhere in the middle in order to get the talent to come work for you. And we've been really successful in getting a lot of our pay rates up for our people. I know internally, our average pay rates through our, this is a blended through our geography. Pre-pandemic was around $14.50 or so, and now we're at like $16.70 on average. So we've gone up an easy a couple bucks, just in pay rates over the last, I would say, since March, April 2020 to current. So and I don't see it. I still don't see it going back, but that's what we're doing. We're just educating our customers that it's here to stay. It's not a blimp. It's not going away. This is what it is now.
Is that your sales rep, your sales force that's doing the educating?
Yeah. And we bring in our communication. We have a communications team too that helps put the presentations together. They'll go back and do the work with a lot of different job boards like Indeed and everything else that we work with.
Yeah.
We have a tool that develops these wage analysis for us. And we'll go back with a team or one of our VPs and just explain it to them like, hey, this is the market we're in, and this is where we need to be to really help you out. If not, we understand that and appreciate that. We're not the right source for you.
Yeah, David, how's Averett handling this?
Very much in the same way. When a client is not ready to come to terms with what the market is, that really becomes an unsolvable problem for us. And so much of our work is contingent upon us getting a butt in a seat. We're just having to have those frank conversations with our clients and let them know it is not like it used to be. And just because they feel that it should be the way it used to be, or their cost structure is X, I can't make that work in this market for them. And so we educate them and really let them select themselves out of our client base, because we just can't, use those resources for a potential client who just doesn't come to terms with what the reality is. So a lot of education, we would rather supply a sample candidate at market rate and then maybe someone who's not at market and let the client make the decision. But we simply just cannot waste time and resources on clients who aren't there yet. So education, showing examples. On the search side of our business, we've moved to more retained searches in this area. Again, just to the value of our time and our internal staff's time. And if a client insists on us working on a problem that seems to be unsolvable, we're going to ask them to put some skin in the game and basically fund that search, because I can't make that happen just in a contingent basis if they're not ready to come to terms with those things. So, and the response has really been positive. We've had more clients in this season, the past 2 years, ask us for rate information in lieu of demanding a rate to us. So previously it was, well, we'll pay this, or we'll accept a bill rate of that. More clients are asking, what would it cost me? We have that question more often than ever. What would it cost me? And sharing information that way.
Charles, can I give a quick anecdote? Here in Central Texas, did some work with the Central Texas Hospital Association, and they were having some serious staffing challenges. And they had done some investigation, and they got down to the bottom line, which was there was a Buc-ee's travel center that was relocated in the vicinity, and Buc-ee's started paying $15 or $16 an hour for all of their front level staff. And you wouldn't think that would be a challenge to a hospital, except when you look at a hospital staffing and you see how many people could either work at Buc-ee's or work at a Central Texas hospital and make $11 or $12 an hour. You know that the competition now, they were moving to Buc-ee's. And so now the hospital association was going to have to ratchet up their wage to attract workers that not necessarily had any formal skills, but that had the best employability skills. We know them as soft skills or human skills, but looking for people that they could train, that would show up on time. Our hospitals were competing with a travel center. And so that segment or strata of workers that's in short supply now is being wage competitive.
Mm.
Yeah, we always think about like Amazon coming in and raising the level of the sea with wages, but it's amazing how there you are, Austin, Texas, 160 people moving to Austin, and one competitor, one other business comes in and throws things out of whack for another business.
Yeah, yeah. Let's move to internal employees, sales reps, and recruiters. Brian, how is the reserves network handling this?
Yeah, I think we've done a little bit with this. Probably not a whole lot. Recruiters is where we've really seen the pinch, competing with larger companies with internal recruiters. A lot of the companies we work with, the remote option doesn't work as well as with some others, because we're doing manufacturing predominantly, mid-market manufacturing. We have some challenges with that, but we put some things in place. We have a pretty what we feel is very competitive, commission profit sharing structure that's really based off the gross profit, which drives everything. So by having the right metrics in place and driving that growth and driving that gross profit growth and rewarding all of them based upon that, that's kind of helped us with that. We have adjusted some bases here and there in certain markets where it got a little harder to retain some of those key employees, but our internal turnover has been relatively high the last probably year and a half compared to historical numbers too, as well, because we're feeling the pressure just as much as everyone else and all our customers are with retaining the staff as well.
Yeah, David, how's Averett dealing with these wage increases for internal employees?
We've decided to take a pretty aggressive approach. So we increased our base salaries somewhere between 10 and 12% this year, just to stave off the lure of corporate recruiting. Our commission structure has remained relatively the same, but we made the investment in the base salaries with the idea that we are really ratcheting up that client and job selection that we mentioned before, and our commissions are up. Our operating revenue is up through this. We also are very adamant about allowing our recruiters to work from home, and we felt that that's helped us stave off some of the external pressures for the internal recruiters. And some people often ask, well, how do you police the productivity with all the recruiters working from home? And we have a lot of kind of younger mothers who work for us. And we've taken the approach that, you need to take care of whatever you need to take care of at home with your children and your family, as long as your work gets done. We're going to give you that freedom. And a lot of those recruiters have held so tightly to that right that the production has self-policed. They've really worked really hard the past couple of years. It's helped. Our retention has been really strong. So we've been aggressive with the base salaries, given them a lot of freedom when to work. And that's really paid off for us in retention.
Hey, David, what is your remote work policy? How many is it? 100% remote work?
It's for the most part. We only require them to come in if we have specific trainings or events. And so it's probably 90 to 95% remote work for us.
Wow. And Brian, have you adopted a remote work policy?
We don't have a company-wide one, but we have a lot of different people that are in various roles that will be. We have some that are just fully remote. We have some that will, be in the office and then be out 2 or 3 days a week or 1 day a week. So we're extremely flexible with that. We're adapting as the roles and everything else adapts. So that also plays out with the market, depending upon the markets and who their key customers are and stuff. That's how we're able to determine those things.
It's one of my clients said, hey, if you want to triple the number of responses to a job ad, just put the word remote in the job ad.
So Tom, I think what we're clearly going to see going forward is not so much the work at home model per se, because there's such a big chunk of the economy that really cannot work at home or work remotely. But opening this Pandora's box has opened up, I think Brian said it, expecting employers to be much more flexible in their work arrangements, working around schedules and trying to accommodate wherever possible some of that work-life balance. And so I think flexibility in scheduling is going to be the watchword going forward in terms of attracting talent.
It's like the number one. You look at these HR surveys; it's the number one thing that, and it's not just a millennial. It's baby boomers and Gen Xers and all. They all want flexibility in their work week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are calling this podcast or this panelcast the Great Correction. Well, we've all heard the term, the Great Resignation. And you're right, that is number one on many lists. And yes, it goes beyond just millennials, the idea of flexibility. Assuming inflation remains relatively high going into next year, which is probably a safe assumption, and Rich, feel free to weigh in on that. How are you planning for 2023? David?
Our plan is to hold strong on our path with client selection and job selection. Again, back to the point that we can't solve unsolvable problems. So we're going to continue to educate our clients and really choose to do business with the individuals who understand the market that we are in, and let those clients deselect who can't get along. So we're going to plan again for another increase in the base salaries for our internal recruiting and business development teams for 2023. And then we're going to again look at potential price increases, something we really haven't mentioned yet, but we've done some significant price increases this past year, which have been met with very little resistance, by the way. I think our clients understand the task they're asking us to do. So, increasing the top line revenue through price increases, and understanding that our operating costs are going to increase again next year.
Yeah, we're going to pick up on that in the next question I'm going to put to you guys. Brian, 2023?
Yeah, I mean, David pretty much hit most of the points I want to make on the head as far as going into that 2023. We're just keeping kind of the same tune. We're selecting the right customers. We've looked at and retooled some of our pricing structures, our negotiation tools with customers to make sure we're getting more, and training our salespeople not to undersell our value right now, because we have the market dictates that, and the cost structures dictate that. And going through and looking, at all our relationships, going forward, and looking at price strategies as far as increases and stuff like that. We've done one earlier this year as far as all our customers. Now, it wasn't all the way across the whole customer base that we sent out a mass letter. We were selective in that, where it would allow us, where we thought we were undervalued, going back to the customer, just talking to them about everything. And 95% of the time, it's like, yeah, we understand it, we get it. There's no fight back. Then you'll get one or two that will fight back, and we just come somewhere in between and agree on something. And whether it's a percentage increase, or we change conversion hours, or certain fee structures or what have you, we compromise in other ways as needed. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how I think 2023 rolls out here with the way things are pacing.
I think it's interesting to note, Charles, that when we start talking about inflation, most people talk about it in terms of the consumer price index, which is between 8 and 9% level. But when you look at the producer price index, what corporate America is actually having to pay from a cost standpoint, it's closer to the 11% range. So if we can get the producer price index number down in the 6 or 7%, we've made a lot of progress through the end of this year, which means that's a lot of pricing that's going to be passed on by various businesses, and especially and including those that specialize in the cost of labor and providing labor as their service.
Yeah. Notwithstanding that economists have predicted 9 of the last 5 recessions, we'll take you at your word, Rich. Anything to add to that, Tom?
No, good stuff. Good stuff. Just taking a few notes here.
Next question, and it's a big question that's affecting the entire industry. Margins are relatively flat. Operating expenses continue to increase, resulting in net income decreases. One lever we have is to improve operational efficiencies. That is increasing the gross profit production per internal production resource. How are you achieving operational efficiencies. Brian, David, you can decide between the two of you who's going to have it that first.
I'll go first. Technology has been a big one for us. The last couple of years, we've really invested heavily in technology. So automating a lot of those manual tasks for recruiters and having them really spend more time talking to the candidates and getting them on assignments and stuff like that. You know, we've deployed our own app. So we got our own app, which I think is going to be pretty critical because I forget what the stats are. I read them all the time, but, you know, I think it's like in the 80% of, you know, job seekers are using their mobile device to apply and get jobs and stuff like that. So it's critical to be in that space. And, you know, we've been working on that technology for a couple of years and finally launched it late last year. And we're trying to also get our recruiters used to it, right? So it's good to launch the technology, but you got to get them trained to start using the technology and kind of breaking habits they've been doing for, you know, many of years. So I think that's going to be a real key thing. And then kind of like what we did during when the pandemic started, you know, back in 2020, you just do a quick overall evaluation of your operations, right? Are you know, you got too much middle management, too much management? What branches are, you know, are good in what market? Are they performing, not performing? If they're not performing, make sure you got plans that you think you can turn around. If not, do you exit that market? Just looking at those, you know, operational efficiencies as you go into something, you know, like possible like a recession like this. I mean, by all technicality, we're in one with the 2 negative GDPs, but no one's yet to admit it. But I think we are there. But we can kind of see how, you know, how deep it goes. You know, if it just kind of works its way out over the next 6 months or 8 months or 9 months, what have you. But yeah, and we've been doing the price increases to help offset some of that. You know, with increased gross profit, you know we're going to get some pushback on our vendors, and we're going to have, you know, increases. You know, so as long as we can balance that and keep our operational our operations efficient, I guess, looking for the word there. I think we'll be successful, and we've done that. I mean, we've been doing this for 38 years now, so I think we've gotten a pretty good track record among all the ups and downs that staffing's gone through in the last 30-some years.
Yes, David.
I agree with Brian. We're not only using technology to our advantage to try to eliminate as many manual processes as we can, but continue to evaluate those. You know, every time a renewal comes up for a software, you know, we're gauging our team to see, hey, is this providing value for us? And then trying to negotiate with those vendors, because they're doing like everyone else and passing along, you know, large price increases. So making sure you fight back on those and make sure that you're getting the best value for your firm through those vendors. But anything from onboarding to reference checking, anything that we can do to automate, we're certainly doing that. We mentioned the price increases, but you know, it's not just the prices. Brian mentioned terms and conditions. For example, you know, I think we're averaging about 4 million quits per year, per month right now in the U.S. So why would we continue to have a guarantee period on a perm placement that reflects historical quit rates? We quit more now, so we've shortened our guarantee to 60 days. It used to be 90 days. And we share with our clients, look, people quit more often. We had to respond to the market. We didn't make that up. The market is what it is. And so, you know, tighten up some leakage on agreements, you know, making sure, you know, we've added new language, you know, stronger language in our agreements on refills, that on a perm placement, if a client doesn't get that bill paid, they have forfeited a refill. You know, traditionally you would see sometimes a client would wait and say, hey, we'll just see if they work out before we pay the bill. If it doesn't work out, you know, it's all good. No, we need to make sure that we get paid for the work that we've done. So tightening up some of the leakage on your revenue stream through these periods has been helpful for us. And again, if you speak to and educate your clients, they tend to understand and go along with those things when you share that with them. So price increases, and then technology and tightening up leakage on revenue streams.
Hey, I a couple side questions here. Just so Brian, the app, your technology platform, is it the Aviante, correct?
Yeah, we have Aviante as our base technology. Our Reserve a Job app is basically working. It's the customized working version. And we use different sense technology to automate the candidate engagement process, which you know, it's all great, and we've been working with that. One of the tough things, like David kind of mentioned, is doing the ROI on their technology, because there's not, you know, it's a lot of soft things floating around. You know, you got to figure out what the right measurement tool is. That's what we're kind of working through. We're going through our whole tech stack, looking at what technology we're using. Are we getting a return on it? Is there stuff that we bought that's sitting on the shelf that we don't need anymore? We're actively actually going through that process right now with our tech stack.
That whole work in business model, it's different than the traditional billable hour model. I mean, the idea is that you're building a marketplace of candidates that you're going to try to retain. I mean, what's the industry average turnover rate for light industrial is 400 and something percent. So every 3 months you're turning over those recruits. And so the whole idea is, hey, we want to retain these temporaries for 18 months or 2 years or 3 years or whatever. Let's add some training in there. Is the reserves network shifting to that kind of a business model to drive efficiencies?
Yeah, we're trying to drive as much as we can through the mobile app, because, like I kind of mentioned earlier, a lot of your job seekers and talent, everybody's, I shouldn't say everybody, just about everybody has a mobile device now.
Yes.
Some people that have mobile devices don't even have computers; they just have a mobile phone device.
Yeah.
So by being right in front of all the talent, you know, that's the greatest opportunity, right? So the greatest, I guess, it's almost like having the front page ad in newspaper, right? You're right in front of them all the time. They got the app on their phone. They could look at it, get notifications. That's the platform, you know, to be able to onboard people from there, to be able to say, hey, we got open jobs that fit your skill set. You know, look at your open jobs in your area, click on it. You want to take this shift, click here, boom, you're signed that shift now because you're already in our database. And then they could just go there, put their time in on the app, and then it submits all through that, and then we pay them, and life goes on, and they just keep going. It's all in that device.
I mean, the ultimate is that you're going to retain that resource for many more months versus 13 weeks.
Yeah, you're just keeping that engagement. It keeps that engagement and redeployment too. That's key. That's one of the areas of, I think, that we have a little bit of weaknesses is redeployment. I mean, we can't afford to lose the talent. It's hard to get it. Once you got it, you got to have another spot for them to go right away. Yeah.
David, are you looking at any kind of a on-demand staffing platform for the contract side of your business?
Yeah, definitely. It's on our technology stack questionnaire. So we're reviewing to see if that's a good fit for us for sure. Yes.
Hey, Tom, can I weigh in from the public sector side? Is that
yes.
You know, my organization at C4EO at TSTC, we've been dealing with this issue of being able to identify and codify skills for a number of years. In fact, we have a whole entity that we call Skill Engine that's developed some very sophisticated skill library and skill profiling software that we're bringing into the public sector that allows you to ingest text and not just generate keyword kinds of descriptions, but do full skill profiles for any kind of text, not most notably resumes and job postings, to improve the labor exchange efficiency function. So doing skill-based hiring and using a skill library that has full skill statements and allows us to better improve the alignment between worker skills and job postings is something we're very much in tune with.
Yeah, it's.
We'll be rolling out. Actually, we'll be rolling out some tools next year that are going to be in the public domain. They'll have free to no cost that allow you to do some of that skill profiling online. And so you get small and medium-sized businesses that don't have the ability to purchase some sophisticated software that will be able to use some of these tools to do the exact same job match skill profiling process.
Oh, it's such a big deal. You own a small business. Those next hires, they're so critical to the growth of that organization versus I've got a big company like Brian's. I can make a few hiring mistakes.
Our Texas Workforce Commission actually places, from labor exchange functionality, places hundreds of thousands of people every year. And they're always looking for ways to be able to do that more efficiently, looking at the skills of the unemployed and those that are discouraged workers or on the unemployment insurance rolls, and better being able to match them with the skill demands for available jobs. The better we do that, the less unemployment insurance we have to pay, the cheaper it is for our business community.
Yeah, nice. Hey, another area that a lot of my clients have obtained efficiencies is in the area of offshoring. And historically in the staffing industry, we thought about offshoring on the fulfillment side, the recruiting side. But gosh, I mean, I've got multiple clients in the healthcare sector of the industry that are offshoring, quote unquote, the credentialing. I've got clients that are offshoring, back office, payroll function, and so they're looking at every functional area within their business to offshore. Brian, any in that area?
We've explored it for recruiting, for a lot of different opportunities, doing the offshore recruiting in some other countries, but we have yet to pull the trigger on that. We're still doing all our own right now in the States.
So Tom had a very interesting conversation with a guy who was running an accounting firm, and he came up to me after one of my sessions and he says, Rich, any job that's a remote work at home job, that home could be in Texas or it could be in Sri Lanka. And so as we start thinking about more and more jobs where it's a work at home arrangement, where home is matters a whole lot less, which means as we start thinking about the possibility of going back and recruiting labor supply chains, and we don't care where that person lives, also means it doesn't have to be in the United States.
Well, and it's not just big businesses. I mean, my little consulting business, I've got 3 people in the Philippines that are doing work with us and 1 person in Mexico. It's absolutely spot on. David, are you doing any kind of offshoring anything?
Well, let me speak from the broader perspective of our parent company, Rich, which is also a CPA firm. And the public accounting sector has been hit terribly hard by the talent shortage, and it's just a tough recruit for everyone in public accounting. So we do have an office in India, and we approach that not for cost savings, but for retention and relief for our U.S. staff. You can imagine how busy a tax season is for public accountants. And so that's a big part of our entire talent strategy. So it's not just saving money to offshore, but it's literally creating relief for the people that we do have, and spreading that workload across a different location.
Hey, the last one, Charles, the last efficiency question is the agile workout process. Brian and David, are you familiar with the agile workout process where you're taking incremental, your ATS, for example, where you're taking incremental improvements, and then over the course of a year, those improvements end up dropping X thousands of dollars to the bottom line. Anybody on staff that's got an eye on creating efficiencies with the internal technology that you're utilizing?
Yeah, that's what I'm actively working on now. We're building with our tech stack. We identify like all the technologies we use, and now it's going back, looking at those contracts, what we're paying, and then looking for key KPIs or things we can measure to determine how effective and efficient that technology is for operations. And based upon that analysis, then whether or not we continue that technology, we look at a replacement technology, or maybe we just don't need that technology anymore. Yeah, we're going through the exercise right now.
So you're the agile expert.
Yeah. I guess you'd call me that.
All right. Anything else, Tom, or are we ready to move to the Q&A?
Just things that I keep hearing in the industry that are popping up. So
yeah, no, excellent. So, all right, the Q&A, we got a bunch of questions. The first one is actually for you, Rich. Given what we've experienced with inflation over the last 18 months, what advice would you give to small to medium sized businesses? That's a pretty big question.
You're right. That's a pretty broad question.
Yes.
I think somebody told me a couple of weeks ago that they were now into the Tetris model for staffing, which is trying to cobble together their labor supply based on a wide range of various sources of labor supply. So some of it's key staff, employees. Some of them are contractors. Some of them are temporary. Some of them are technology. And piecing together a staffing model where they're open to a variety of different sources of talent. And I think going forward, especially for a small business, you have to be willing to be open and build your Tetris model for staffing to be able to make sure that you get the kind of talent that you want. You don't have to necessarily own it, but you have to be able to fit it together into your business model. As far as inflation is concerned, I think if I had to go out on a limb, I think there's probably a 60 or 70% chance that inflation will be in the high 5s or around 6 by the end of this year, which is still elevated, obviously, by concerns, which means the Fed is going to continue to be concerned about that, and we'll continue to fight inflation with interest rates. So that's going to make borrowing costs a little harder for especially those small businesses and those lines of credit. So I'm not sure I have a lot of great news for small businesses competing in this environment. I think the last time you saw the National Federation of Independent Businesses surveys talking about their viability going forward, something in the 80 or 90% range said if the recession gets too deep, that they will challenge their existence as business entities. So, fighting this double-edged sword of labor shortages and inflation is a challenge going forward. I'm not sure how to sugarcoat that.
Yeah. By the way, David and Brian, don't feel intimidated by Rich's economics degree or his voluminous library. Although, David, I'm not sure if that's a virtual library or an actual one. I'll withhold judgment. But guys, feel free to weigh in on that. Inflation, small business, medium-sized business.
2023, well, Brian, gosh, we talk about this in the CFO roundtable all the time. In terms of planning for 2023, my gosh, you've got to be, right? Wage inflation, internal salaries, commissions, temporary inflation. What are you planning for? What's your management team talking about for 2023?
It's a mixed bag of a lot of different things between the wages, for temps, internal staffs. When we're looking at our strategic planning, actually next month around this time, we have our annual strategic planning meeting where we bring everybody together and kind of brainstorm on these things of what we're expecting to see next year, what our goals are, where we want to be, how we're going to position ourselves for the potential continued recession for the rest of the year and maybe even into 2023. Who knows? But we're just doing the normal things. We're looking at wages and things as we need to, and we're always trying to retain the talent. So whenever we have people that we think, based on markets are low in certain areas, we're looking at adapting to that. We do also, we've gone back to companies. A lot of companies used to do this back in the day, but it's kind of gone away a little bit, like total compensation package statements, right? Saying, okay, well, here's what we pay you, right? But here's all the other things you kind of forgot about.
Total comp.
All the insurances we pay, all the short-term disability you have. There's a whole lot of other benefits that go into
educational opportunities.
Yes. So having them understand, it's not just the dollar amount we pay you on the paycheck. There's a lot of other things that we got, and that flexibility, there's a whole bunch of things that we put into that now to help them, educate them, and understand all those things. So I think it's going to be a little challenging in 2023, but we're optimistic because we got a lot of different moving parts and markets, and it's been pretty good for us over the last couple of years. Even during the pandemic, when a lot of people slid, we boomed in Texas, actually, where Rich is. That was an extremely hot market for us, with a lot of COVID related needs. And that business that we had down there, tripled in size during the pandemic, and it helped offset some of the other areas where we did like business, and like where you're at, Tom, in Chicago, Illinois, they had a lot of shutdowns and stayed shut down for a period of time. So I'm very optimistic about 2023. I think it'll be at least as good as 2022. I'm hoping, and if not better, worst case.
Yeah.
David, I'm sorry, go ahead, Tom. I was just going to ask David if he shares Brian's optimism, but
I do. I certainly do. However, those of us who lived through the Great Recession of the previous decade, sometimes you get a little nervous when you hear about recessions and you see the interest rates and you see inflation. And so one of the things I would encourage, back to the question, a small business owner, is to watch your data closely. Don't wait till you get a financial statement as a historical document. It's not a living, breathing scorecard. I think Brian and I use probably a similar scorecard system to run our businesses. So all your key data points, with new job orders, starts and ends, all that whatever your key indicators are in your business, look at those all the time and start identifying those trends as early as you can. My big concern is if things don't go as well as we think they are next year, is how do I staff? Because that's one of our largest costs is internal staff. And so as I'm carefully weighing how do I staff for next year, we just keep a close eye on what we call our scorecard with all those data points. Don't wait till you get the information that's historical, and try to be abreast of this data as it goes. Pay attention to folks like Rich, and be aware of what's going on. It's so easy, especially for a small business owner, to be so buried in the business. Come up, look at the data, see what's happening around you, and be prepared to be as agile as you can, because as you know, sometimes it can be too late before you make a move.
Tom, can I emphasize something that Brian said earlier? You used the word employer of choice. When we start looking at why people are quitting jobs, McKinsey just finished a very interesting study, and they found that inadequate or lower compensation to be the second reason why people quit jobs. But number one on that list is a perceived lack of opportunity, upward mobility. I think number three on that list was not being able to learn new thing and have new experience. I think number four on that list was making sure that the culture in your organization was something that's attractive, especially to younger generations, in this labor market. So when we start talking about both recruiting and retaining workers, pay is an important but not the only factor. And I think that's especially true with small businesses, is that there are other things that you can do to attract and retain your workers. You got to have a reasonable compensation strategy, a total reward strategy. But you also got to focus on, you have the opportunity to focus on some of these other things where you can build loyalty both to the company and to help invest in individuals. And if they see you're investing in them, there'll be a little extra loyalty.
That's a great point.
Yeah, no, that's very much the case. I mean, we talked about flexibility being the number one thing that people look for, but they also look for recognition. They look for opportunities. Am I going to be able to advance in this organization? Am I given opportunities to upskill and so forth? So point well taken. Another question for Brian and David. We kind of touched on this a little bit. Given everything that's been going on with inflation and the Great Resignation, what advice are you giving the management team, those that are in the trenches at your company? Brian?
Yeah, I guess I'll tackle that one. I guess one of the benefits that we have, I think, is we have a pretty long tenured management team, which I think speaks to the culture and stuff that we have here. Most of our senior level management VPs have been with the company for 10 plus years, so we've kind of seen a lot of these different things along the way. So one of the things that we've talked about, we talked about this morning on our level 10 meeting, but we constantly talk about, how we got through the pandemic is one of the key words. If you're in staffing, you have to have resilience. Resilience is key to surviving the staffing world. There's so many ups and downs and back and forth. You just gotta be able to weather the storm and go through all that and prepare for that. So, we are prepared for that. We're just watching, where we need to hire, we're going to hire. If it's one of those nice to haves, we think about it, and maybe we hold off on it for a little while to see what still progresses, to the end of the year, and then maybe we pull the trigger a little bit later. But they have a good idea and are really good at kind of looking at those things and managing their markets. And if we think they're going too far in some of the hiring, so we do watch that. That's one of the key areas we watch quite a bit is the hiring process now, and just kind of let that work itself out. I think we got a good team in place to do that. And the customers, like we mentioned earlier, making sure we got the employers of choice, the right customers. There is bad business, just don't go after the bad business. Not all business is good business, as they say. So you got to be careful and selective in this market, because you want to make sure they're going to be able to pay you in the future. So we've changed over the last several years because of the pandemic, our credit structure of how we do credit limits for our customers and how much we monitor that. So we have a customer that goes dormant for more than 90 days. Guess what? We re-pull the credit because you don't know what changes in that period of time, because it changes so fluently nowadays. So just keeping the eye on that to make sure we get everything collected. So just little things like that we watch and monitor along the way. And like David mentioned earlier, is with your metrics. I mean, we look at those things every week. We have the scorecards that come out. We're looking at it, holistically. We're looking at it by branch. We're looking at it by market and regions, and all the way granular down to the customers. Looking at the customers, if they're in an affected market that we're not liking the results, and see how those customers are performing, on GP. Are they right customers or not?
By the way, we have only 4 minutes left, so we're officially going to a no huddle offense, David. So if you have anything to add, by all means, please.
Briefly, as you do think about hiring for the managers in the trenches, Rich mentioned we've got a real skill mismatch with the workforce. As you bring people onto your internal team, I encourage you to invite people maybe who have not been in the staffing business. And use the phrase, hire for will and then train for skill. I'm just so compelled by an article that I read, Wall Street Journal, about Walmart was offering somewhere around $110,000 a year for truck drivers, right? So obviously Walmart can't function if they don't get product on the shelf. But if you read into the article, and even the subtitle said that the company was bringing in employees from the stores and the warehouse. So they are reskilling individuals who had demonstrated good characteristics. So they were reliable, they were dependable, they came to work, they had good attitudes. And those are the qualities I think you need to add to your team. There's just nothing worse than adding a toxic individual to your team, especially if you're a small business. It creates the ripple effect. And when you're of like mind and have a single focus and a single vision, bring people into that will help you carry that out. It's very tempting to go out and hire staffing people who have experience. One, they typically cost more because of that experience. They may have a non-compete. Things can be difficult for you. So starting fresh and adding people of like-minded and want to accomplish a goal with you can make this a lot easier.
In a general labor shortage kind of environment, if you're not investing in your own employees for upskilling opportunities, I think you're really missing a bet here. And I think that's why the whole notion of upskilling or reskilling, especially the folks that are already there, you already know what value they bring to the organization, is getting to be a really important part of future staffing.
Excellent. We're close to the top of the hour, so I'm going to want to thank the panel. Thank you all for taking the time. This was excellent. Much appreciated. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today to discuss the great correction. And Tom, I know that you had some closing remarks.
Just that we started out with wage inflation, and there's no simple answer. We talked about flexible work opportunities to employees. We talked about upskilling, offering upskilling opportunities for employees. We talked about technology with budgeting for 2023. So it's a what we call a complex structured response, and there's no one silver bullet with this one. But still, unfortunately, we didn't solve anything, but we sure added a lot of light to the issue. Maybe some resilience across the board, huh? Amen.
Yes. Again, thanks so much, Rich, Brian, David. Much appreciated. This is great. This panelcast will be available later this week for anyone wanting to relive the experience or to share it. I want to close by thanking Essential Staff Care for their sponsorship of this series, Staffing in Sync, conversations with the staffing industry's top thought leaders on today's most pressing and important staffing and business issues. Produced, of course, by SingStream, providers of ACA, ERC, and WOTC compliance, automation, and expertise for the staffing industry. I'm Charles Epstein for Tom Kosnik. Join us next month for an equally lively panel conversation